Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Against the Grain podcast. Huge thank you to everybody who's been liking the videos, commenting, everybody who subscribed. Thank you so much. We really appreciate everything. Super excited for my special guest today. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce her. Everybody, this is Ashley Nadine. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to have you on.
I am really excited to be here, and it really is truly a privilege. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. Awesome. Of course. No, it's an honor to have you. And we unintentionally matched today.
I love it.
The pink and white.
Yes.
So awesome. All God.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for being flexible. I know I'm sure you have like a lot of stuff going on, but we made it work. How do your Mondays usually look? Are they busy?
Oh my gosh. So it was an extremely busy day. But yeah, you know what my thing has been is I need to make God a priority every day. You know, so that's been something that when I'm doing like these events and conferences and things like that, I tend to get caught up in the doing. And sometimes I just have to get in the sitting, sitting alone. So thank you for asking me that, because that's been something that the Lord's been stirring up on my heart to just
that's amazing.
get alone with the Lord.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then it's such a blessing too. It's like we're doing. We can get so caught up in the doing.
Right.
We forget to just take a moment and rest and like be in his presence, But your story, man, I actually caught a glimpse of your story. There was one Sunday, it was really cool. Pastor actually asked you to share your story at harvest time. And it was awesome because that same Sunday, he actually had both of us share our testimony. You shared like briefly, and then he asked me to come up and share briefly. So it was awesome. We got to share a little bit of our testimony in front of the congregation. So I got like the 5-10 minute max version of your testimony. And that's all I've heard. But even just that alone, I was like blown away. And I just think it's so timely with, you mentioned before we started, there's a movie that just came out.
Right.
And it has a lot, to do with your story. So if you don't mind, just kind of take us from the beginning. Like, what's your story? Who is Ashley and what has she come out of?
I love it. Yeah, it is such perfect timing. So I actually grew up in a really great home. And what I mean by that is a stable home. A lot of times people think that with like human trafficking or dancing at the strip clubs that people come from a very broken home. And I actually had the opposite. I grew up in a home where I was getting good grades. I was on the cheerleading squad. I was on the dance team. I really made an effort to do well and to make my parents proud. And I'm very blessed because my parents are still together and they have a beautiful marriage. My dad really honors and respects my mom and loves her and adores her even to this day. Like he still brings her flowers home, things like that. And then my mom really respects my father. They have a very traditional marriage. And so I grew up with like that in the home. Yeah. But unfortunately, when I was 14, I went over to a friend's house and spent the night over there. And she invited me. She was like, oh, my gosh, there's this house party around the corner. And me being a good kid and involved in extracurricular activities and things like that, I had a really bad feeling, like a gut feeling, they say. I call it a God feeling, A gut feeling is a God feeling. It was like, hey, I felt like I shouldn't go, but I ignored it. And so we went and there's this big house party. And right when I got inside the house, she ended up leaving me alone. And I still wonder to this day if I was set up. I'm not sure. I can't say for sure. But she left me alone. And immediately I was approached by an older gentleman, physically very attractive. And I was vulnerable. I was in the situation. And so he asked me to come into another room with him, and he started talking to me. And there's something called the grooming process that happened for the next couple of months where he started to romance me. I started to, I really, because I had grown up in a home with parents still together, I truly just wanted to be with, with somebody. Yeah. And so I thought he was my boyfriend. I thought he was my boyfriend. And this is the moment I remember when everything changed. He used to take me a lot to the Hollywood Hills. So we went to the Hollywood Hills, and he pointed to one house, and he would always point to this one house. And he said, Ashley, that's going to be our house one day. And so I was like excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, he's going to propose to me. Like, I mean, I had my whole life was planned. And so that same day we went, and there was this, I remember the road and everything. There was a windy road. We came down, and he took me to this park, and he told me to get out of the car. And once I got out of the car, there was these 2 excursions that pulled up. Sorry, sometimes it's hard for me to talk about this stuff, but these 2 cars that pulled up, and that's when he slapped me across the face, and he said, "You're going to be working for me now." And my life as I knew it was not the same, you know, since that day. I was introduced to 2 other pimps, and there was so many minors. I mean, I remember looking at this book, and this may get a little graphic, but it reminds me of the movie The Sound of Freedom that's out now. You know, they show images of these kids, and I didn't see anybody that young at that time, but definitely in the early teens, you know. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I know her, and I seen her, and looking through this book, and there was all these graphic photos, you know, and stuff. And so that happens. Yeah. And it's not just in another country. It's here in the United States. And it happened to me on the east side of Palmdale, which is just a few hours from LA, you know? Yeah. And I think that my message is to bring awareness. You know, I've actually, I did this before it became popular. You know, I was out there talking about this, and it was like almost like a weird, you know, nobody, hush, hush, don't talk about it, don't talk about it. But it was my story, and it happened to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this happened when you were how old?
I was 14.
14 years old. So this guy made you think he was your boyfriend. You were falling in love, but it was all part of the plot. Like, all of it was part of the plot.
Yes. And what's interesting is he was actually being groomed by a pimp that was at a higher up level than him. Wow. So it was just like this weird hierarchy. And I only met that guy one time. He was on his 3rd strike, which means he could go to prison at any time, obviously, for certain things that he was involved in. Right. But what I realized is that there was even grooming for the pimps that were, you know, right? Because nobody thinks about that. It's like, how do these pimps and how do these men get into that? You know, the same way, how does a stripper become a stripper or a prostitute? It's like they were brought in, that, you know, somebody had to groom them to think that way, you know. I've met some prostitutes that they just grew up like that. Their mom does it, and that's how they live. And I'm like, you know?
And that's so crazy. It was so simple as you went to a party and your friend left you alone. Like, that's all it took.
That's all it took for me.
And I think about, like, how many young girls in high school are doing this every weekend.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
And it's gotten worse. I mean, there's 2 million kids that are in, you know, human trafficking right now. 1 million kids go missing, you know, and I mean, I've stories from just getting snatched up off the street, you know, to the Romeo pimps. They call them Romeo pimps, where, you know, they pretend to be your boyfriend. And then I also did a lot of ministry work and nonprofit charity work in Las Vegas. So I've heard so many different types of trafficking. Mine was more of the Romeo pimp, you know, and the seducing and the romancing and things like that. But yeah, my story is that it can happen to anybody because I was a good kid. I mean, you know, not that I didn't have an attitude or whatever, like, you know, a normal teen does, but I mean, I had good parents, you know, in the home. I got good grades. I mean, I was focused in school. I was really involved in sports. I mean, so I think I had a pretty good level of confidence. I think my desire to be loved by a man is why I think I was more susceptible to human trafficking.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy because it's like, not only that's a huge thing in women, to the point where, like, they'll go home with anyone. Right. They'll sleep over anybody's houses. You know, they've been drinking a little bit, and you never know, you know, and it's like only by God's grace, you know, that hasn't happened to some women, because it can happen so fast, so quick.
So quick. Yes.
But so, okay, so this happens when you're 14, you know, these two excursions pull up. So I don't know how much you can share from that point, you know, that we're recording, but are you able to kind of take us a little bit on what your journey was after that?
Sure. I for the sake of the podcast and things like that, I'll spare details, you know, but, I was blackmailed. I did, there was photos taken of me, in a basement like place. And that's what I was telling you when I saw the book of all the other, you know, I don't want to say children, but teens about, you know, in this book, I took the same type of photos. It was a forced thing. And then it was, if you don't do this, we're going to send these to your parents. We're going to put these out there. There was a lot of blackmailing. There was a lot of, just fear, you know, instilled in me. And then the biggest thing they used, the biggest tactic for me was they knew now where my family lived. And that part was like, I would have done anything to protect my family.
Yeah.
And so I started to actually, I ended up moving in with one of the pimps. And we would have to do house parties and things like that. I won't say who I've met, but you would be very surprised at, you know, like Tim Ballard said, there's no profiling a trafficker, and there's no profiling the person soliciting the sex, because it can be anybody.
Wow.
It can be a politician. It can be a famous person. It can be the choir teacher. It can be anybody. And so I think that's very, you know, it's like we can't profile. We can't figure it out, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, for my story, I do have a huge amount of hope. My story didn't end there.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I feel like God, I mean, all of us, right? We all have a story, and like God takes us through these journeys, and like he never left our side, regardless of what it was. But at the end of it, it's like we get to look back and say, wow, now I've been through it, and I can help people who have been through those situations. So it's so awesome that you've gone through that, and now you're able to help women and help young teen girls, or just teens in general, you know, to be able to be aware of these things, because a lot of people aren't aware, you know, and it's just hidden under the nose. Like even the movie, like they're talking about how they're not marketing it and how they're not putting it out there, and you know, showing that it's one of the top movie, you know, in the country right now.
Right.
But so what, you moved in with this pimp, but how did your family know? Were they aware of what was going on?
Oh my gosh, they tried stopping me. I mean, I to this day, one of my biggest things, I go to a lot of recovery programs. I stay in a lot of recovery, a lot of therapy, and a lot of Jesus.
Yeah.
One of the steps is making amends. We're really big on making amends to people that we've caused harm to. And that is something that I really want to do with my family. I want to sit them down and make my amends to them, because they were innocent, you know, in this. They did everything they could. This guy's, I mean, as soon as they saw him, they were like, he's bad news, stay away. But I was so out of control at that time. Like and people always say that, why didn't you just leave? And it's like, when you're a 14-year-old girl and you're, you know, broken down, because they break you down. I mean, they abuse you, they break you down. It's this really weird relationship with your abuser that happens. And I fell in love. And so even though they tried to stop me, they really couldn't do much at that time. I would run away. I'd run off with him. And there was nothing they could do to stop me from moving in with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long did you live with him?
Ooh, it was at least a year. Yes. And, but there was something that happened where I ended up getting pregnant. And so I wanted to confess this to somebody, because I knew that I had to make a choice, because if there was no way they would have let me keep my daughter, like there's no way, like no, that doesn't happen, right? So because of that, I decided, you know what? I'm going to reach out to this friend of mine from high school named Amanda. And I remember Amanda, she was never judgmental. And there was always something different about her and her family. Like, I feel like there was something about them that I was like, oh my gosh, like, I just felt like safe with her. And I wanted to go and confess everything that I was going through. And so I did. I went to her and I told her, hey, you know what? Like, I'm being basically forced. I'm in the strip clubs and now I'm pregnant. And I'm basically being controlled, you know, at this point. And she started to tell me about Jesus.
Wow, come on.
It was so powerful because you would be shocked, but I had never heard the name of Jesus. Like, I didn't even understand. And like, nobody, like, I think my grandma used to carry around like a baby Jesus or something. Like, she's Catholic. And I don't know, I used to think, like, when I was younger, I'd be like, what is she doing? Yeah. But no one's really ever explained Jesus. And so she told me that if I was to keep my baby, that God would provide for me and that he would protect me. Those were the two things she told me.
Yeah.
And you know what's so crazy? I always, even to this day, think about it with my walk with the Lord, is the same day that she ministered Jesus to me, I'm on my way to work at the strip club in Hollywood on Sunset Boulevard. And the song by Kanye West comes on, Jesus Walks. And then I'm like, wait a minute, Jesus. I'm like, hold on. That's the same person that she was just telling me about. And then he's like, I want to talk to God, but I'm afraid because we haven't spoken so long, you know? And so all of a sudden it was like, okay, just heard Jesus. Now I'm hearing it, you know, on my way to work.
Yeah.
And then I get to work and I'm in the back of a strip club dressing room getting ready. And I look in the mirror and I could see my little belly is starting to come out. Like, I could see, you know, my baby's starting to form in the womb. And I went to go fix my lingerie. And when I went, remember looking down and I looked back up into the mirror in the strip club dressing room. And I felt God and his presence of a father in the back of a strip club dressing room. And it was such an encounter. It was like a holiness because I was afraid, but it was a love, but it was so many different emotions wrapped up in one moment. It's like when people say my life flashed before my eyes, like it was like God and his love flashed before my eyes. And when I looked in the mirror, I felt like I was like staring at a father. Like it was like, whoa. And I immediately knew like I couldn't be in the strip club anymore. Like I had to get out. Like I was panicking. Like I was like, oh my gosh, God is chasing me. God is chasing me. And I was afraid. And I told my friend who lived with me at the time, she's like, girl, are you drunk? Are you high? I'm like, girl, no, I'm sober. I was like, I'm trying to tell you, like, God showed up. Like, it's God. And she's like, girl, you're tripping. Like, whatever. So I get home. And this is the part where I was like, okay, for real. Like, God, you're really chasing me right now. But I get home and there's this book on my dresser called God's Promises for Women.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, heck no. There's no way that anybody in this house would even have a book like that. Yeah. Like, no way. So I'm like really tripped out, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, you know what? And I'm kind of like, you know, gangster, like, you know, I've been through some things. So I'm like, let me open this up. So I open it up and it said the first verse I've ever read in my whole life was, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find.
Come on.
And knock, and I will open up the door to you.
Yeah.
And right there in my room, no church, no choir, no nothing, just me and God. I said, God, if you're real, then I need you to show me.
Wow.
And then I felt the Holy Spirit come into my body, and it was almost like the old spirit, like I could feel it like leaving my body, and I felt like a new spirit coming into me. And since that moment, my life has never been the same.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you ever find out how that book got there?
No, I haven't. No, I don't know how that book got there, but it was what the tool that God used to for me to read a verse that gave me life.
That's amazing. Because, man, when God is after you, like, he'll find you.
Right.
Like, he'll find a way to make sure that you notice him, you see him, and you hear him. But it's so awesome that, like, you followed the trail that, like, he laid out for you.
Yes.
And you knew it was him. Like, you had never heard that name Jesus. But it's just when you have an encounter with God like that,
right,
it's like there's no going back.
No.
Like, you can't.
No.
There's nothing else. Like, it's like literally he's giving you the words of eternal life in that moment. And it's like, what else am I going to do? Like, you showed me already.
Yes.
I can't do anything else but follow you and love you. And it's so beautiful.
So good.
Man. Like,
it's his presence, you know, it's a tangible thing, you know, it's unexplainable. Like, I used to tell people, have you ever done ecstasy? Because I was like, I would do ecstasy back then, and it felt like ecstasy. It was so weird. Obviously, I wasn't high at the time, but I tried to explain to people like that encounter I had. It was like, but obviously to me it was real, and nobody can convince me that God is not real.
Yeah, exactly. That's so funny that you say that, because I used to do ecstasy all the time, right? Like, before I was saved, and I would go to raves, and obviously, you'd pop E. That was like the thing to do at raves. And, when I got saved, I got sober, and I couldn't like do drugs or, smoke or alcohol or any of that anymore, because I gave it all up to walk with Jesus. But it's like, when you're so in love with God and you're truly in his presence, like, you don't need any of that, because none of that compares to his presence.
It's amazing.
I remember the first time that I actually felt it. We were here at the warehouse and we were worshiping, and I got prayed over, and I like fell to the ground, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I literally feel like I'm on ecstasy right now.
Right.
It's crazy.
And you're present.
Yeah.
And you don't need it. It's it's like, and I'm in recovery groups a lot, so I get to be around people who are struggling with alcohol or chemical dependency, drugs, and things like that. But I gotta agree with you, because being present is such a blessing. It's such a blessing to just be able to be present and not need any of that. Yeah.
There, in the movie Jesus Revolution, they talk about how when they're at that like festival, right? I don't know if it was Woodstock, but it kind of looked like it. And they say that drugs are a quest, and they say drugs are a quest for God's presence. And I'm like, so true.
That's good. Like, I got to take that one. That's good. Yeah.
When they said that, like, it hit me like a truck, because I was like, it's so true. Like, people are really out here taking drugs, chasing something, and they're chasing God's presence. Like, if they only knew what that high that they're after, it's Jesus. It's his presence.
Oh, that's so good. It's like heaven, heaven on earth, right? Like, we want that tangible heaven, that presence of God.
Yeah.
But something I think our generation needs is also to know that suffering is good too. I think that message, I call us the microwave generation, right? We want it fast, quick, and easy. But honey, let me tell you about a slow cooked meal, baby. Yeah. It's so good.
Yes.
I like cooking, by the way. But the point is that, when you let the Lord do his work, and you really submit to that process, you're going to be pruned. You're going to be cut. It's going to not feel good.
Yeah.
And that's okay. We gotta get okay with not being okay, and allowing God to perfect us and cut those things out that we need to be willing to be more Christ-like, but it's gonna be coming with that pruning and that cutting.
That's so good. That's so good that you use that analogy, because it's true. It's like microwave generation. It's like, when does a microwave meal taste that good? Probably not a lot. Versus like a slow cooked meal. Like, yes. But it's a generation of instant gratification. Like, we want it now, this moment. But it's like, that's not how God works. Like, he doesn't work on our timing. It's his timing. But man, that's so good. So you got pregnant. You walked this out with Jesus.
I did.
So how was that? Like, what ended up happening? Did you end up leaving that lifestyle that you were in when you got pregnant?
I did leave the lifestyle, and I love this question, because you know what? I actually started working at a car wash.
Wow.
Very humbling. You know, I was a stripper, honey. So I had the bombest car.
Yeah.
I had the best furs. Like, I could go on Melrose and buy whatever the heck I wanted.
Yeah.
And, you know, I gave it all up because what I found was better than what I had.
Yeah.
And when your pain, when the pain outweighs the fear of change, I think that's when you're really ready. My pain was so bad in the strip clubs, even though I was making all that money. My pain was so bad in that relationship. My pain was so bad in that abuse that I was willing to risk the unknown and walk this path with Christ than I was to stay where I was at.
Yeah.
So,
Crazy.
yeah, I worked at a car wash. I was the girl that you came up. Hey, what are you want to detail? Like, yeah, it was very humbling. You know, it was a humbling time, and then I moved to Las Vegas to get away. I was really afraid of you know, it didn't just go away. Like, I still felt very unsafe in that area and stuff, and so I started fresh out there in Las Vegas, and I went to college.
Wow.
Yeah,
Amazing.
I went to UNLV.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for you. What did you go to college for?
I went for psychology.
Okay.
Yes, and actually child psychology, and I was working with autistic children for some time.
Awesome.
Yeah, but then I just got so moved by ministry, and I did so much ministry work out there, brothels, strip clubs. We used to go to the strip and evangelize, and it would be like 3 a.m. We'd be praying with drunk people. Like, you just, yeah.
That's awesome.
It was really great. Yeah, so I started my nonprofit out in Las Vegas at the time.
Yeah, that's so crazy. So how long were you out there in Vegas doing the
10
work?
years. Yeah, 10 years of ministry work.
Yeah.
And just recently, now that I'm in California, you know, I started back up my, you know, back ministry because I also own a bridal shop. So yeah, God bless me with a bridal boutique, which, like, I think that is very prophetic for me because it's hard for me to see myself sometimes past the stripper Ashley, past that trauma in my life. I'm still working through that a lot, but God sees my potential, and He sees me in the future. And so for me to feel like God co-signed me as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as a bridal shop owner, I think that to me was Him saying, you know what, you're worthy. I see you worthy, you know. I mean, he could have blessed me with any business, but bridal is what He handed to me, literally. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That was going to be my next question.
Sure.
Like, that's a huge transition. Like,
right.
You're living this lifestyle. You're a stripper. You get pregnant. You just decide to, like, clean your hands of it. What sounds like, I mean, it sounds like obviously it was still a process, right, to walk away from that. Then you move to Vegas. You're doing all this ministry, all this amazing stuff, like street ministry. And then you're blessed with a bridal shop and you become this amazing entrepreneur businesswoman. So what, like, I mean, that's the grand scheme of things, right?
Right.
What was in the details? Like, how did that happen? Like, what did that day to day look like? And how did you get to be the businesswoman, you know, so well put together to who you are now? Like, what was that like?
Yeah. So that is, what I call, God filling up my empty hands, because at this point, I'm empty-handed, right? Like I'm starting over completely. But all I did was dive into ministry. And I remember God told me, He said, I want you to go back to your hometown where everything happened. Yeah. And I avoided it for so long. Like, I did not want to go back to my hometown. But God kept putting it in my heart. I want you to go back and I want you to throw a conference there. Wow. And He was very specific with the details. And so I finally faced it. I went back to my hometown and I did a huge ministry event there. And what I did was I invited women, human trafficking survivors, and also women who are in the industry, because a lot of them, they're models or, you know, I basically know how to get them in, but I used a fashion show. So I did a fashion show and I would have women in the industry and things like that come and model during the show. And then I would have women who've escaped share their testimonies so that they could hear And then I would have the resources right there at the conference.
Wow.
So it was very unorthodox, not in a church. It was like at theaters or like places where we could have a big runway, you know, things like that.
Yeah.
And so this one happened to be at the a theater, and God just broke out, like his spirit broke out. But after the conference, one of the sponsors that I asked to use her dresses for the ministry fashion show,
Right.
she called me about a week after, and she was like, I want to talk to you. And I always say this, you're one phone call away from your whole life changing in a good way. You're one person away. You're one person away from your whole life changing.
Wow.
This woman, she's a godsend. Her name is Maria. And she calls me after the conference, and, you know, and she's like, you are so special. And I was thinking, like, oh my gosh, you know, because I used to just hang out with her. Like, I'd go to her shop and I would just be like, oh, these dresses are so pretty. I just want to hang out here.
Yeah.
And I just really wanted to be around her and like the pretty dresses and everything. And she goes, she's like, you know, I think you're the perfect person to take over. What? And I said, what? This lady was, I think she was 83, she said, 83 years old. She was way past retiring, but she didn't want to let it go. But she told me that when she met me, that she felt like she was ready to like hand over her legacy.
Wow.
And I'm like, wait a second. So long story short, I ended up buying the business, but I knew it was a setup from the Lord.
Yeah.
But if I wouldn't have been obedient to what God told me to do, to go back to my hometown, to face where I ran from, I would have never been handed the blessing of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's amazing. God
Yeah.
totally set you up for that one.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm going to hit 8 years in August, 8 years in business.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. So it is blessed. It is
Yeah.
blessed. Yeah.
That's amazing. Do you still put on like conferences like that at your bridal shop?
I actually have a conference coming up. Yes, on
Awesome.
July 22nd. It's going to be at Harbor Light Church in Costa Mesa. And, Pastor Manny is going to be there, and so many more. But this time the Lord told me it's not about that. And that was very hard for me. I was like, but I want to do like the gala and the pretty dresses. And he said, no. He said, not this time. And so I'm listening, but it's hard. It's hard to let go of my own agenda and really be submitted to like what he wants me to do. So I know it's going to be powerful if he's saying this, but it's hard because I like all the
The glamour.
I like makeup and God was like, not this time. I'm like, okay, Lord. So so it's going to be at a very humble, like the church has pews. I do love that though. I do think that there's something very sacred and holy about, I don't know. It's very, very different.
That's exciting. So this conference, the Limitless conference, you're putting it on.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
That's so awesome. That's exciting because Pastor Manny's speaking, and then I know HTC is worshiping there too.
Oh yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I love everything that Harvest Time does. I think when I first moved out to Orange County, you guys know that your church was the first people at my door, knocking on my bridal shop door, and you guys came and brought me candles and towels, and I never forgot that. Because I didn't know anybody in Orange County when I came back to California. And then you got to understand too, like I was still kind of nervous to come back to California.
Yeah.
So they treated me like family, and I had a lot of church hurt. So I think they healed a lot of my church hurt and a lot of the judgment that I have received and things like that. So I'm very grateful for Harvest Time.
How did you get connected with Harvest Time? Like, how did you meet them?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so through Matt Cruz. Matt Cruz, Marcus Rogers, and we did this video in Chicago, and it went viral. I shared my testimony in the back, and Marcus Rogers and Matt and my friend Nikki, we were all for, and oh my gosh, the glory of God showed up. It was so amazing. But then I connected with Matt, and then Matt connected me with Sylvia, and so how it goes.
Full circle.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I know we were just talking about that conference. We're so excited. It's going to be so good. we're for sure going to roll deep.
Oh, yes. I can't wait. I know. I'm so thankful to have you guys.
Yeah, it's so awesome. It's like, and then you also have some other people on the panel that like we're connected with, which is awesome. It's like, it's such a small world. And I remember Manny told me this, like when I was like first got saved and I first started like branching out, going out to like other events. And he's like, you're going to get to learn that in this community, everybody knows everybody. Everybody's connected somehow, and it's going to be a small world, and you're going to be saying that all the time. And I'm like, it's so true, though.
It is so true. You know what's one thing that I thought was very interesting was that without knowing this, so you know, God just highlighted certain people to come and speak or, you know, be on the panel, and every single one of them is a believer or like demonstrates deliverance. And I was like, okay, so I don't know what God is going to do. I'm here for it. But I was like, I started putting the pieces together because I started like saying, okay, this pastor does this and they all, and then they all have a heart to go outside of the church walls, which, you know, for me, because girl, you know, I got to go to the strip clubs. I got to go get the people outside of the church walls. So I'm very much into, you know, going outside. So I love that about everybody that's going to be a part of the conference.
That's exciting.
Yes.
I'm super excited for the conference.
Yeah.
So what else do you have going on? I mean, you have the bridal shop, you do conferences. Is there anything else that you have on your plate besides that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I do a lot of speaking, you know, and that's something that I feel God has been really prompting me to do again. Like I was saying, and perfect timing with this movie coming out because, like I said, I've been talking about this since way back in the day when like people didn't even, they're like, what is human trafficking, you know? But this is, you know, so anyways, I'm definitely a huge advocate for getting more awareness. I mean, you know, just like I didn't know about Jesus existed, people don't know that human trafficking does exist. You know, there's still people who probably are like, I don't understand. Like even today I had a lady in my bridal shop and she was like, I don't really know what it is. Like, you know, so there's people that are still unaware, you know, but that's definitely on my heart. And I want to continue to just share the love of God. And then I have a bridal expo coming up as well. So the weekend after the conference, and then so we'll do a bridal expo, which will have a fashion show, but that will have to do with like wedding dresses and things like that.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yes.
So how old is your daughter now?
She's 17.
Oh my God.
I know. It's so weird. I know. I had her when I was 20, so not to share my age or anything, but you know. But yeah, she's 17, and
that's amazing.
Yeah, she is actually she's on fire for God.
Really?
Yeah, which is shocking. Wow. She actually makes me want to do better. Like she'll come in sometimes in my room and she'll be like, Mom, I just read this verse, and she'll like break it down, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like my 17-year-old is ministering to me right now, you know? It's amazing. I mean, it's amazing because she went through a time where she was like, I don't believe in God, and she totally rebelled, and it was probably like a good 2 years.
Wow.
And I had to love her through it and just continue, and she kept thinking that I was going to judge her for some reason. She kept thinking that, and I was like, no, baby, I love you. Mommy loves you. And so, and now she's like, Mom, we got to go to church. Yeah. Oh, Mom, we got to do this. I'm like, okay. So anyway, so she keeps me like, you know, you guys, you young folks over here, you guys keep going. I'm like, honey, I need to take a nap. Like, so
but Gen Z is just so on fire for the Lord. It's so awesome to see, just like they're going after it. Like, so beautiful. That's so awesome. Yeah. So your daughter's in high school. Is she a senior?
Yeah. No, she's she's going to be a senior.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah. But to add to your comment, it's so true. You know, God is really doing something in California. I mean, Greg Laurie just was 4,500 baptisms at Pirates Cove.
Was that this past weekend?
That was this past weekend.
Yes.
And then a month ago, there was a whole bunch of churches that came together. That was another, I think it was like 3,500 baptisms.
The Baptized SoCal?
Yes, Baptized SoCal. So and then Ross Johnson with Cali Will Be Saved. They're out. I mean, every single time I even go on social media, like the church is alive.
Yeah.
The church is alive.
Yeah.
And I love this. I love that we're like, there's been a shaking, you know, something's going on. It's like, it's so exciting. I'm like, it's such a great time to be alive right now.
Yes.
Such a great time to be alive.
It's so amazing. I feel like we're seeing just so many people just come to the Lord. I feel like so many people are just so lost and in distress. Like there's nothing out there, and people are like at a breaking point where it's like, all right, I've tried it all. Like now I have to try Jesus, you know?
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
It's so exciting. Is your daughter like your only child?
It's my only one. Yes, my only
that's
child.
amazing.
I think I'm good. I'm good on the kids. Yeah. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time as a single mom raising her. And you know, I feel like I've done everything I could. I know parenting is never over, but I feel like I've poured so much into her.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm excited for this new season that God
Yeah.
has. Yeah, I'm so excited for all the new he's doing.
Yeah.
So
that's so good.
Yeah.
So when you were out there in Vegas doing all that street ministry, you were doing that as a single mom?
yeah. Yes, I was. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I still would go out, and of course with people I trust, you know, that and so I know her family also lived out there. On her dad's side there was some aunts and stuff that lived there. But yeah, we would go out and do like on the actual Las Vegas Strip. And we would go while people were coming out of the clubs and things like that.
Yeah, because that's like the heart of it. That's like Sin
Oh,
City.
yeah. And you would be surprised how many amazing people I met out there, too, which is very interesting.
Really?
Some of my best friends came out of Sin City, which is Las
Really?
Vegas. Yes.
Yeah.
And they love God, and they're like powerhouse women that are on fire for God and have great businesses and things like that. I've met some amazing people in Las Vegas. Yes.
That's amazing. That's so wonderful because you don't hear that a lot.
You don't.
You
That's
know?
why I'm saying it. It's very, I'm still to this day like, man, I wouldn't go back to Vegas to live there, you know, but it's definitely, there's some good people out there.
Yeah.
They're doing the work of the Lord there. Yeah, they're really going out, and you got to be strong to live out there because there's gambling everywhere, you know, all the prostitution, strip. I mean, it's Sin City, you know.
Yeah.
So you're
the temptation.
in the thick of it. Mm-hmm.
Every corner, everywhere you look.
Yeah.
Man. So was there a point in your relationship, if you don't mind me asking, in your relationship with your daughter, was there a point where you're like, okay, I have to talk to her about like everything that happened to me, you know, to kind of warn her? And if so, like, how did she take that, you know, hearing that her mom went through all of this?
Yeah, so I'm a very transparent person. I waited till I would think she was about 13 to start to talk about it. You know, I didn't go into details or things like that. But now I am fully like open. Like I disclose a lot to her. Sometimes I think I almost over sheltered her, you know, which is, you know, to me, hey, I over sheltered versus not, whatever, you know, you can judge me if you want, but at the end of the day, I did did a lot of protecting. As a mom, I believe that is my job, to protect my child. So, I talk to her. I talk to her openly. I talk to her, Mommy, you know, I was in the strip clubs. This is what happened. Like I talk to her, and because of that, I feel she's more open to talk to me about but about situations that she told me the other day. She goes, Mom, I talk to you like my friends don't talk to their moms like I talk to you.
Yeah.
And I go, really? And she's like, yeah. And I didn't even realize that there was a difference, you know.
Yeah.
But from her friends, and her friends even tell her, like, you know, you have a good, like a close relationship with your mom.
Yeah.
So
It's so beautiful because it's like, I remember, and it's no knock to my parents at all. Like my parents did the best that they could. And I'll always say that, you know. But as a kid, I just remember like going through so many emotions and like going through so much. And, you know, I just didn't have that relationship with my parents to where I could fully be open about what I was going through or like what I was dealing with without being shut down or like, oh, you're being dramatic or like, oh, that's not really what's going on. Like, oh, it's all in your head type of things, you know?
Right.
So I always like dealt with that by myself, and I didn't know Jesus. You know, I've been saved like 3 years now. So when I was a kid, I didn't know that I could like lean on Jesus and talk to Jesus about everything and talk to God about everything. So I bottled all of that, and it does something to you because then you seek the validation in the outside world.
So true.
When you're not like getting it in your home from your parents, you know, the ones who should be giving you that. So I think it's so important. You know, I don't have any kids yet, but when I do, there's going to be that open line of communication where it's like, you know, you want your kids to feel safe. You know, you don't want them to feel like they're going to be shut down or they're going to be judged or, you know, like, oh, I don't want to tell them because they're just going to yell at me or hit me or whatever the case may be. Because it's a real thing, you know. So it's so beautiful that your daughter is aware of that and like doesn't take that for granted. And she's able to see the difference from like her friends to like, well, my mom's not like that with me. I can talk to my mom about that, you know, because it makes all the difference in the world.
That is so that is so true. Yeah, because I think that's why I got into the things that I got into, because I didn't feel like I had an outlet, you know, to talk to anybody. And so I definitely think that's a game changer. Talk to your kids. My grandma's the one who told me that. She used to tell me, just talk to her. Don't, you know, it's yes, you're still there to parent. You're not there to be their best friend, you know. However, you know, explain. Sometimes it's not just no. It's like, no, but this is why, baby. Like, no, you can't do that because da 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 da. You know, you give the explanation, and that opens up the line of communication. And Layla, my daughter, and her dad, we did therapy one time all together. And the therapist actually taught me that, as she's like, did you ever think that your parents might have been wrong? And I said, yeah. And she goes, so do you think that maybe Layla might think that you may be wrong? And I was like, oh my gosh, yes. Because I'm the parent now, right? So it's like, okay, like there was times where I thought my mom and dad were, you know, that I was right. And I wish they would have just listened, right? Well, just listen to what I at least have to say.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that's something that I've done different in my parenting style as far as communicating with my daughter.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And then what about your family? Was there a point where like you finally came clean to your family about like everything that happened and everything that you went through?
So kind of. The way it started coming out was more through like I was on the news and then I was in magazines and like more through media. And I wish I would have done it. That's what I was saying with my amends that I need to make to them. It's still something that I'm avoiding, but I do in Jesus' name need to get it done. But yeah, they found out through more so like a video testimony. This church, I spoke at a conference and they did this amazing video testimony, and my aunt sent it to my mom. And you know, for whatever reason, they came around.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it needed to happen that way.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't need to hear it from me. Maybe they just needed to see it. But you know, my dad, he doesn't want to know. He's like, it's too hard for a dad. Yeah, dads don't want to. They want to protect. They want to go. You know, so I think he probably feels helpless. You know, and I don't want to put him in that repetitive hurts. You know.
Yeah.
So, but my mom, I feel my mom now that I'm older, we could have deeper conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. I remember when I kind of went through something similar, right? Where I was like going through this like life-changing, like I have to talk to my parents about like everything that I went through as a kid. Cause like a lot of this stuff, like I didn't share to my parents, you know? And there was a point in my life where I was like, you know, I need to come clean. I need to talk to my parents and I need to be open with everything that I don't even think they realized that they put me through as a kid, you know? And my dad, like, it's funny because I wrote them a letter. I literally like hand wrote them a letter. And then at the end of the letter, I was like, we can talk about this if you want to talk about it. But at the end of the day, I just want you to know that this happened and I forgive you and I love you. And I'll leave it up to you if you want to talk about it. You know, and my mom, of course, was like, I want to talk about it. My dad was like, it didn't happen, you know? Right. But it's
denial.
Like,
it's okay. Yeah, that seems to be the common thing that I hear. Yeah, I think something about men with their daughters and emotions, it's almost like they just don't want to look at it.
Yeah.
You know? I get it. Yeah. Similar situation. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's so good. It's so good. Yeah. So it's so awesome. Well, Ashley, thank you so much. I do want to ask you before we end the podcast. Sure. You know, this movie, it's huge right now. A lot of people in general are seeing it, but, you know, especially young kids, young girls, young boys. And a lot of them are lost. A lot of them are just like, it's not going to happen to me. You know, it's like, it's a far off situation. But if you could give any piece of advice, you know, from someone who's came out of that lifestyle, what would you have to say? Like, what piece of advice do you have?
For someone who's come out of the lifestyle, I would say that recovery is possible. And I think that, you know, I remember somebody saying, oh, well, you're just too damaged. And, you know, I don't see that, because when you have Jesus, he makes you whole. And for me, again, I still believe in recovery and therapy. When I say recovery, I mean, like, I go to Celebrate Recovery. Like, there's programs, like, you know, it's facing that trauma. But I definitely think that that's not the end. I think that's the piece of advice that I would give somebody, is that it's not over. You can find your identity in God. You can recreate your identity in him. You know, there's gifts, there's talents, there's things that he's blessed you with. And if you can just tap into to the Holy Spirit and to God, you will be in a much better place than within that lifestyle that you were in.
It's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. It's so amazing to see, like, you're literally a living, walking, breathing testimony of God's goodness and how he will just leave the 99 for the one, you know?
Yes.
No matter where that one is at.
Yeah,
you know?
no matter where it's at. Yes.
Yeah, he will meet you in just the deepest, darkest places, and like, you don't have to clean yourself up before you come to Jesus.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Oh, I can't imagine if I thought that. Yes.
Yeah.
He helps you along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Ashley, it was such an honor having you on. Thank you so much for sharing your story and bringing awareness. And I genuinely, truly hope that this blesses someone, that this opens someone's eyes,
Me too.
especially like a teen girl, you know, it's like, be cautious when you go to parties, be cautious when you're out with your friends, be aware of your surroundings, like,
Right.
be careful who you're hanging out with.
Even on social media, you know, they pose as younger boys, things like that. That's, yeah, it's huge right now. So that too.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I've seen so many videos of that, of like, you know, people catching pedophiles in that way. It's scary, but we just got to be cautious. And, you know, parents, like, I'm not a parent yet, but still, I'm an older sister, I'm an older cousin, you know, but just, we have to be aware we live in a world, but also not living in fear, trusting in Jesus. But thank you so much, Ashley. It was such an honor. And thank you guys so much for tuning into another episode of Against the Grain podcast. Please be sure to share this episode. It's going to bless someone. I know it in my heart. And it's going to bring awareness to someone who truly needs it. And just thank you guys. Please like, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.